All right. Good afternoon or good evening, I should say, to those of you on the East Coast. Good afternoon to those of you on the West Coast. I'm your host, Brandon Troy, host and co creator of Movers and Shakers Unlimited. Thanks so much for joining us wherever you are joining us from. Today, I'm fortunate to have a cool guest on with us, talking about Lucio Ball, Doc, regarding Lucio Ball, and so much more as well. You saw it here in the background that I have here, Doc known as Stu's Show. So I would love to welcome the star of that doc, Stu Shostak. Let me bring him on. Stu, how you doing, man?
I'm fine, Brandon, and you're the second person to refer to me as a star. I'm 65 years old. I've never been called a star. It sounds
Sounds
great, but it's
weird.
yeah, I think it's a little over enthusiastic. I'm the subject of the film. I think I'm a little more comfortable with that. But if you want to call me a star, that's fine.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Fair enough. So just to get the ground running, man, can you, talk to me, a little bit about this project and getting involved with it because just as we have down there below, we have CJ Wallace, putting together this feature, but still how that kind of that coalescence, so to speak, or that joining came together in doing this
Well,
project.
it's a little long, but I'll try to paraphrase.
Okay.
Um, as you know, I've been doing a show on the internet for 16 years, and I salute classic television. CJ's first documentary was called Perfect Bid, and it dealt with the story of this person who went to the prices right all the time and memorized the prices of all the prizes. And a lot of these game shows, they use the same prices over and over again. And in any case, he yelled out the exact price of a showcase to a contestant on set stage. And it turned out that it was the only time in the history of that show that somebody guessed the price of the showcase right down to the dollar. And there was a whole big investigation that people were panicked, like it was going to be the quiz show scandals of the 50s. To make a long story longer, I found this film fascinating. So I invited the former producer of The Price is Right, Roger Dobkowitz, and CJ, the filmmaker of Perfect Bid, onto my show to help him promote that film. And when CJ came over, he saw what I had with classic TV reels of film and tape. And he saw that I had worked for Lucille Ball back in the 80s. And he was also captivated by the battles I had with the insurance company and the medical industry to get my then girlfriend, now my wife, well. And he said it was all so much because there's a lot of aspects to my life and career. He thought it would make a great film. And I said, well, I will do this not to brag about my years working for Lucy, not to get a plug for my show, but if we can make the emphasis of this, how to show people how to deal with the medical industry, that you can emerge victoriously. You have to sometimes become a screaming maniac to do it. It's more with the insurance company than it is the actual places where your loved ones are recovering in. I said if I can show people that they can beat the system, then we can make this film. And the difference here is, because of the show that I do, all of our friends are all classic TV stars, and they all rallied around us during our 9 months in the hospital. And, whenever there is a crisis in a family, your friends and relatives rally around you and give you that support. It just happened in our case that all of our friends were classic TV stars. And that's CJ thought that was a great enough hook to do this film. So I hope that makes sense. I kind of
Oh
rambled on
no,
there.
no, 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 absolutely, absolutely. And thank you for sharing that. We're gonna make our way, back full circle, so to speak, to get, to, talking about, the medical industry and the battle that happened there. I want to be able to take a journey, if you will, because I feel like taking that journey, we wouldn't be able to get to, coming full circle with that story without, what came before, what transpired before, and talking about just this project in general. Typically in um when you're dealing with docs and that type of medium, there's so much, just as you were talking about, there's so much story to tell. And I'm curious in terms of that process of putting together the cut, or providing providing some, not necessarily advice, but to the filmmaker, but kind of collaborating, if you will, on what would make the cut that we finally see. Were there components of that where it was kind of a juggling act of deciding, or coming to an agreement of, yes, I really want this to make it into the film, versus maybe this might be a little more superfluous, versus something that I feel like should be in there.
Okay, I understand what you're saying. You want to know basically whether there was corroboration between CJ and me on
Yeah,
what went
yeah,
into.
and if so,
Okay, I
like,
got
the
it.
percentage-wise, how that worked, of deciding what was
What
making it.
I'm one of these guys that doesn't like to interfere with the creative chops of somebody else.
Okay,
Okay, I saw Perfect Bid. I loved what CJ did. I trusted him that our story would be told accurately, correctly, sympathetically. I think the only comment I had, because I pretty much let him do what he wanted to do when we started this project. I said, I think the thing to do is to sit me down and let me tell everything from beginning to end. And we ended up doing that 3 or 4 times, because after each session, I remembered something that needed to be told again. So I gave him 3 or 4 different versions of everything. And then, as you saw in the film, he intercut from one to the other. From what he
sure,
felt would be most compelling. The only criticism, and I wouldn't even say criticism, let me say note. The only thing was, when I saw the first rough cut, I thought there was too much of my life and my career in it, and not enough on the struggles I had against the medical industry. But, being a filmmaker, he said, the general public does not know you, even though you've done a show on the internet for 16 years. It's a niche audience. It's classic TV people. This movie is going to go out to the general public because, as you say, you want them to know how to deal with the medical industry when a crisis occurs.
you
They
need that
have to
hook.
get to know you first.
Sure.
And so they have to know where you're coming from before we can tell the story of you saving Janine. So I bought that right away. You want to know the truth? I think there's still too much of me in this. I'm trying. I have to be very careful, Brandon, because the film is called Stu Show. I'm Stu. You called me the star. I'm the subject. I don't want to pat myself on the back and break
Yeah,
my arm. So
yeah,
I'm trying to be very careful here on how I promote it. Once I understood why there's so much of me in the first 30 minutes before Janine doesn't even come in, it made sense to me, because when I saw the finished film, I said, yeah, you have to get all that in there. They have to see how close I was to Lucille Ball. They have to see my warm-up career. They have to see the television show that I've done, over these past years and everything. They have to kind of know my personality, so that when the film does this 180 and gets into me struggling to save my girlfriend, then girlfriend, now wife, they have to feel like they're rooting for me. Do you understand? So
absolutely,
I get
absolutely.
that. I'm still a little weird about being called a star and all that, but I'll probably get used to it.
So the comment further on that, and your career path, and the various things that fortunate enough to do over the course of your career. One component that I wanted to talk about, that I feel it's teased and it's touched on a bit, but I feel like it does play a pivotal role, even in meeting meeting your wife, is the con community. Talking about, because I'm big on cons. Anyone who knows me, I go to cons. I'm a big proponent of cons. I love them, and how that can even be a community upon itself, and create, developing. I mean, yes, you have your, your blood relatives, but in the same way, you have a family all your own that create even among, that community as well, and they become just like family as much as any blood relative would be, because of that initial connection that you guys have on what that passion is in that particular niche of fandom, and then how that branches off. It may start there, but eventually you branch off, and it becomes far more than that. So could you speak to that, and how maybe, I want to say, maybe in the maybe what, last 20 or so years, like right at the turn of the millennium, now that we're having a lot of a lot of like superhero characters, for example, breaking in and becoming more mainstream, in pop culture, more so than they were, maybe in the 80s and the 90s, what have you. And how now that is becoming its own thing. And even with you, you were with the events that you had, being at the forefront of that, whether it was emceeing, all of those various things. So could you comment on that, on how that has developed? Hold on, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I got the gist of that. Yeah, the conventions, that you're right. People get friendships and they bond, and that's what happened with Janine and the Lucy conventions. We started those in 1996. That was about 7 years after Lucy passed away. A bunch of guys and I decided if they could have Star Trek conventions, we could do Lucy conventions. And Janine was at all of those. She was the first one to send her money in. She was the first one to get there, and she did every event. She was part of that whole thing. And I didn't even know she existed then, because I was married to somebody else. I had just had my daughter, and so she was just one of the patrons there. And it wasn't until I started my talk show, the audio version of it in 2006, that she became a listener, and she found out about it through a Lucy mailing list. And I had gone through a divorce, and I was resigned to the fact that I was just going to be a single parent, which was fine. I had my video production business. I had this show. I was making a good living. I had my daughter, and then Janine started calling into the show, and she had, at the time, before the brain aneurysm, she had this incredible voice, and we just started talking. And at some point, on her own dime, because I had been down that path before, she flew down from Northern California, and it was literally, I mean, this sounds corny, it was love at first sight. And everything that I knew, she knew. I could put on an episode of the Dick Van Dyke Show and she'd say the dialogue. Lucy, forget it. She knew the stuff as well or better than me. Andy Griffith, Bewitched, Flintstones, you name it. Three Stooges. How many women like the Three Stooges? She loves the Three Stooges. So it's like I had this failed marriage. Every relationship I had prior to that never lasted long because I couldn't find somebody who was interested in the same stuff. So finally now, after 51 years on the planet, I meet the person that I'm perfect with. And we have 7 great years together. We weren't going to get married because she had been married twice before. I was married once before. We already had our kids. We're just going to stay boyfriend and girlfriend. Then she has this brain aneurysm, and it's like, great. Now I've had this person who loves me back. That was always the problem with all of those relationships. And now I'm going to lose her. Now, I didn't save her just for that. I mean, that was certainly a motivation. It's like, finally I get somebody and now they're going to go away. But the doctors who operated on her, did the 3 brain procedures on her head first. They gave me false hope. They didn't mean to, but if they hadn't because normally it's a 180 in the other direction. They don't want you to get your hopes up. But all of the doctors at Cedars-Sinai, and we had the chief neurosurgeon there, Michael Alexander, he saved her life. I want to get that on record. But he said after the 3rd brain procedure that it doesn't look like she's got a lot of damage in there. She's got some weakness on her right side, which we can fix with physical therapy, and her cognitive skills. There's something damaged there. But until she wakes up, we won't know what that is. Well, it took almost 6 weeks for her to wake up. And when she woke up, she couldn't talk. Her body had forgotten how to breathe. I mean, those cognitive skills were very serious. So she was on machines for a long time, helping her breathe. And she was like in that coma for 6 weeks. Had they not told me, though, that they felt even with that she was going to make a full recovery, which she didn't. She's about 90% back. Had they not told me that, I don't know whether I would have fought as hard. I might have said, this is a hopeless case. Here I go. I lose the one woman in my life that really cared about me. But so that was my motivation, was they said she's going to get better. I didn't let any of our friends in there until after the tubes came out. But even then they were saying, are you really think she's going to pull through? She can't talk. She can barely see, blah, 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 blah. It was that false hope that those doctors gave me that pushed her through. And she is 90% recovered. She's got some balance issues now. She still has trouble seeing out of that eye. She talks on one vocal cord because her second vocal cord is paralyzed. But you'd never know it. She doesn't have the voice she had prior, but it's pretty close. And she's got all her marbles back. It's just that I kind of have to help her walk when we're going up and down hills and stuff. It is an incredible story. Even Dr. Alexander called her his miracle patient, because once he realized that the damage was more extensive, he was sort of surprised at how much she bounced back. So, I mean, Brandon, consider the alternative. She's here and she's cleaning the house again and doing everything that she did before that.
All right. Well, with that being said, I feel like that's a great segue into, what we were talking about at the top of, the medical industry. And, I feel what you were saying is a great segue into what was discussed as a moment, in the film. And that was, I feel like it dealt with the bedside manner, initially. I know there was
Oh,
there was
that
an
one
instance
doctor,
of
you're
that.
referring to the one
There was an
doctor?
instance of that. So, can you talk a bit about that and just having, really pushing through, a lot of those instances um of those that, didn't really foresee, a light at the end of the tunnel, in terms of
Uh,
what you were going through.
let me preface that by saying this. These people see death day in and day out. Okay. This
Yeah.
is their job. They
Yeah.
see pain, they see suffering, they see cancer, they see heart attacks, they see all of this stuff. And at some point, I don't want to say they get immune to it, but they learn to deal with it. Okay. And even though it's your loved one, they have 50 or 60 or even more patients that are just as seriously ill in one way or another that they have to deal with on a daily basis. So it really is up to the health advocate, the person who is trying to get their loved one well, to kind of take the initiative. And if you think that there's something wrong, and believe me, there was a lot wrong. A lot of people take the medical industry for granted and just say, well, they know what they're doing and blah, 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 and let them do their thing. But if you really care about somebody, you're going to be there as much as you can. And there was a lot of stuff that they tried to get away with that I didn't let them get away with. And they had never seen anybody like me in the past. Again, it goes back to the point where the doctors at Cedars, and if you don't trust the doctors at one of the top medical institutions in the world, who do you trust? They're telling me she's going to make a full recovery. So I had that, plus the fact that I didn't want to lose her because we had everything in common. And at my age now and then, that's really hard to find. So I was determined. And right from the get-go, right when she left Cedars, we had trouble along the way. We didn't have that much trouble in the actual hospitals that she was in. We had our moments like that doctor you mentioned. But for the most part, the trouble began when the insurance companies wouldn't pay to keep her in a hospital, even though she needed to be there. She's paralyzed. We didn't know what if she had her marbles, all of this stuff. They insisted on putting her in rehab facilities, which, as I said in the film, is a nice way of saying assisted living for people with Alzheimer's and dementia and all that. And they tell you, they always take you on a tour and show you the beautiful part of the place. They don't show you where the patients are going to end up. And I was assured she'd be in places separated from those with the mental disorders. She'd be in a separate place where they would exercise with her and teach her how to walk again, teach her how to talk again, all this. Yeah, they put her in with all of the other people. So the place smelled like urine. There's screaming people, moaning people. It was horrible, and she deserved better than that. So I won't go into the whole thing here. That your viewers can see the film. But once they're in a facility like that, it is almost impossible to get them out unless there's an emergency. Now, as you saw in the film, the first place she was in, they dropped her on her head. Okay. Again, too many patients, not enough staff. That's not good, dropping a brain aneurysm patient on a hard floor. So I was able to get her out of there, but I had to pick another place to put her in. And again, they show you all these things and they tell you, oh, we won't drop her on her head. We won't do this, blah, 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 blah. The second place I was put in, they over medicated her because she didn't know what she was doing. She kept pulling her tubes out. And because they didn't want to have somebody sit over her to put the tubes back, they kept her asleep all the time. And when we tried to get her up and teach her how to move her arms and move her walks, she was like a puppet with no strings. I think that's how I described it in the film. And so these kind of places really need to be investigated. They really need to be shut down. I got her out of that place because the charge nurse there had enough of my screaming and yelling and hollering at her, and got her back into the emergency hospital. And I won't tip off the whole thing, but once she was in the emergency hospital, there were a few problems there. I think there was one time when she was there and I was up here in the mountains and they were going to transfer her without my approval, and I had to race down there. Again, I don't want to tip off some of the stuff in the movie, but you can't let these people take advantage of you. This is a human being. It's not a piece of meat. If you care about this person, then you need to be there. You need to assert authority. You need to get angry. You see, I'm getting angry just talking about it. And you need to show these people that this is, yes, it's your job, but I'm here to make sure you do your job. And that's where you have to get tough and let these people know that they better be doing their job or they're going to hear about it. And that's how I got her well. And that's what I want to teach people who see the film.
Absolutely, absolutely. And in speaking, further, to that, you were talking about using this as this project as a way to shed light on that and to bring attention to that. So in terms of course, you have you're in the overall goal of what you have, what you are setting to accomplish, with this film, with what's going forward. What do you picture as? And I know you've touched on a couple of them just now, but what some additional steps would be, going forward. You're able to get the get the word out, of shedding a light, on this problem. You talked about, hold on one second. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, I was going to say, you're talking about what people should do when a loved one has to go in the hospital for a serious injury. Is that what you're asking?
Yeah, yeah. Or I would say more so, you've already spelled out, what you seek to, bring light to with this project. I guess more so is, now that this is going to be, released, what, and as it has its run of being released out to the public, this film, are there any other additional objectives, in addition to obviously that you seek to have, as steps of, okay, we shed light on it, great, this is the next thing that I'm picturing will happen, perhaps it will force the instances that you are spelling out, with the medical industry, that will have some things that will be reformed.
I'm not sure this film is going to make the medical industry happy. Let's start that right now. But again,
Okay.
I do
Yeah, of course, yes.
want to say we had wonderful doctors. I had to plow through the toot to get to some of them.
Absolutely.
Wonderful nurses, wonderful therapists, folks. They're there. They are there. Sometimes you just have to push hard enough to get to them. And so my advice to you is because I didn't know there's case managers. I didn't know there's social workers. I didn't know that after a person gets strong enough and has a heartbeat and a blood pulse rate at a certain point, they're to be moved. I didn't learn any of this until it actually happened. There's a lot of on the job training. But if you really care about this loved one, it is your duty to be there and make sure that they are aware that you're going to be there. You're going to get better care for your loved one that way. And that's not to say that I was, a total jerk through this whole thing. Every Friday at each of the hospitals that she was at, not so much at the assisted living places, because she got terrible care at both of those places. Again, because you don't have to have registered nurses there. You can have what are called CNA, certified nursing assistants, and they don't know everything that the nurses know. So you're not going to get the care there. They also have way too many patients there for the amount of people that work there. It's all about the money with some of these assisted living and rehab places. But the point is that every week at the hospital on Friday, I brought the nurses and the therapists candy, and snacks and stuff, because once they realized that I was serious and I wanted to get Janine well, they did go out of their way. It does take some time sometimes. And you still, like we mentioned, you still get bad apples. You get doctors assigned to you that the insurance company pay for because they're cheaper than paying for the specialist. And that one doctor who knew nothing about neurology was basically a breathing doctor, made some comments. Again, I won't spoil that. And luckily, Ed Asner was in the room with me there, so I had a witness. But it's that kind of crap that you want to put a stop to and get those people removed, especially when it's a life and death situation. You can't not deal with people that don't care. There are some in every business. I don't care what business is it, banking, lawyers, whatever. There are bad apples everywhere. But when it involves someone's life and you care about that person, you have to be there. You have to be there, and you have to make them know that you're not going to take no for an answer unless it's a logical reason. And once you do that and you figure out who's there for good and who's there just to do a job, the medical industry can be great. Once I got her to Northridge Hospital, they're our saviors. They have a whole brain rehab department in the hospital there. Every day I saw improvement on her. And she was there 3 months. She was there from June until August, so 2 months. In those 8 weeks, she got more care and was able to finally come home than she got previous to all the recovery. It was a 9-month process. And because they treated her so well, before we moved out of town, we gave back for years. They had an advisory council for the brain rehab department there. We sat on that board and made comments and suggestions. We talked to the patients there, told them how wonderful they were, how they got Janine well. And, Janine is a walking miracle. So the patients there were really impressed. We told them, you're in the right place. So, it's the old thing, Brandon. You do good by us, we'll do good by you. And there are some wonderful people in the medical industry. You just have to kind of dig for them. So again, this long answer to your short question is, if you're really intent on getting the best care for your loved one, I'll say it again, be there as much as possible, and make sure they know that you care. It's not you're getting rid of a relative because you don't care about them, so they won't. They've got to be told and made aware that you're there to get those people well. And then I think you'll succeed. So I hope that answered that.
Absolutely, well said. And with that being said, we'll cap it off there, because I still want to give people an opportunity, to check out the film. So let me bring it up here. So
Okay.
as I said, we have Stu's Show, and Stu. Before I let you go, can you tell folks where they can find you?
Yes, May 2nd, it premieres on all kinds of places. If I can not knock my microphone, you can see it on YouTube. You can see it on Amazon. You can see it on Vudu. And then if you're not computer literate, and if you weren't computer literate, how can you be watching this show now? But in case you're not, you can see it on DirecTV on demand, Dish on demand, Cox Cable, Cablevision. All you got to do is go to those on-demand areas, search Stu Show, starting May 2nd, and then you'll put up with me for 96 minutes, I think the film came out to be.
Outstanding. So again, I want to thank Stu for hopping on here on Movers and Shakers Unlimited. I'm your host, Brandon Troy. Thank you guys so much for watching. Be safe out there, guys, and I will see you soon. Bye.
Thank you, Brandon. You're great.
Absolutely.